Hey guys, and welcome to the Wednesday night Grumpy Sound Guy show. This week we are going to dive into a much sought after subject, something that I'm asked to talk about quite a bit, and that is mixing in smaller rooms or mixing in volume sensitive rooms, low volume venues. On the shorts this week, we've kind of been doing a whole series of 1 minute conversations about this subject, and I've been telling some stories about some not so pleasant experiences that I've had in some low volume venues. So make sure you get over to the shorts and check that out, as well as please subscribe, and like this channel, hit the notification bell, follow it, share it on your social media profiles, and send it to the people that you know can benefit from this. A lot of these principles we're going to talk about today can cross-pollinate over into church production, because that's typically a pretty low volume type environment. I think the church that I mix regularly is about, I'm going to say 84 to 88 dB, so I'm probably 86 dB. I'm being pretty liberal with those numbers. I used to mix a huge Baptist church, community church, and I think our limit was 91 dB, so for, compared to club standards, which, most, B and A room club, venues are typically around, around 100 dB, somewhere in that ballpark, 103, 105, depending on how big a club it is and how many people you got in there. So that's all the kind of stuff that we're going to try to address today. I know I keep saying this and I repeat myself over and over, but only about, over half of you people watching right now are not subscribed to this channel. So please subscribe to the channel. It takes absolutely nothing, costs nothing. It takes just a tiny little bit of effort to hit that button and subscribe to this channel, support this content. If you find value in this content, hit that subscription button. Share these videos with people can benefit from this. Other guys in your band, other guys in your worship team, guys in your tech team at your church, things like that. So, diving right in, the first thing I will preempt this conversation with is the fact that some of these venues, now I'm pretty much talking about secular venues, there are some churches that fall into this category, is they need to adjust their expectations of what they can expect from live music. Live music is loud. It just is. There's no way around it. You're playing acoustic instruments and a lot of times acoustic drums. I know a whole handful of bands that went completely direct with electronic drums and in-ear monitors, and that has really kind of put some tools in their toolbox, honestly, to be able to book smaller venues that typically would not have a full-on, live band because of the volume issues. Now, I know guys that argue that, hey, well, if you're with the right musicians who know how to play to the room, they don't have a problem with volume. And yes, I have worked with many musicians like that. But I will say, in all honesty, that probably only represents 25 or 30% of all the musicians I've worked with throughout my 35-year career. Most guys will start out soft, but as soon as they really get in the zone of playing or get into the groove, especially with any kind of music with a lot of tempo or a lot of energy, is sometimes hard to convey without getting loud. Some guys are great at that. There's exceptions to every rule. I know a handful of drummers that are really good at that. I am a drummer and I am not good at that. So I make no bones about that. I don't sit here and pretend that I have this figured out, because if I had to mix me in a small room, I would not be a happy camper, because you know what, man? For some of us, it just kind of comes out that way. It comes out loud. My technique is loud. It just is what it is. Even when I try to pull back and play lighter, I'm still typically louder than most guys who are very, very disciplined at playing at a low volume. It's not something that I ever rehearsed. I know one drummer talked to me one time about this, and he said he consciously rehearses trying to play soft. I would have to really, dive into that if that was the case with me, because it is not something that comes natural to me. I'm a big guy, I'm 6'2", 3 1/4. I wear a size 15 shoe. Like, I got a big hand. I play 2B drumsticks. That's kind of a big chunky stick. So if you're throwing lumber at drums and cymbals, it's going to make some noise. So, some of these venues, I think, really have no business whatsoever booking anything outside of just, acoustic acts, and bands that are using a lot of backing tracks and things like that for drums and keyboards. I know a couple duos and trios that do that use tracks to fill out, to give it a full band feel. That's super popular, like on cruise ships and stuff like that, when they're, shoving guys into and only have a small budget and shoving guys into smaller rooms. You can make quite a living that way, and playing the backing tracks that have drums and keyboards already in the tracks, maybe even some backing vocals, especially if you only have one or two singers in your duo. So that can be beneficial too. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there that you can kind of go and chew on about adjusting your expectations. As a venue, adjust your volume expectations with the acts that you book. If you're a band that knows that venue A is a volume sensitive, low volume venue, and you're a loud band, don't book that room. Don't take the gig, because you have a responsibility in all this as well. And if you know that's kind of their deal, or if they even tell you that out of the gate, there's no shame in being honest with the bar owner or the venue owner and just being like, well, if that's really kind of how you guys roll, we probably are not the band for you guys. I appreciate the opportunity to come play your club for your audience, but we're kind of a loud band. Your room's small to begin with, or even medium sized rooms with a lot of hard surfaces where the sound is going to bounce around a lot. I used to work in a warehouse venue that was a menu venue where we had a whole side of the business that was billiards, and we had a whole side of the business that was restaurant, sports club, and then the live music thing was kind of an afterthought. And it was a big room. We could seat 550. Many times we had 1,000 or more in the place standing. So it was a big room, but it was just a big hard surface warehouse, and there was a big rig in that room, and it was a lot to keep a handle on. So that kind of moves us into, the part of the conversation where how do we actually execute these gigs as sound people or as a band member who's trying to run sound from the stage? How do we execute these gigs in an intelligent manner to where we're just not pissing everybody off in the room? Well, it starts with, just being super honest about where you are with the act that you're working with. If you're going into a situation like that, which I'll be honest, I really avoid these situations like the plague. I mean, I just don't, it's no fun to mix in a small volume sensitive room, unless I'm mixing an acoustic act or a duo or a trio kind of, acoustic, format sort of thing. It's just not fun. So I really just right out of the gate kind of steer away from those. Not to mention there's usually not much budget there, so there's not a lot of money to be made in those rooms. It is for the acoustic act, but as a production guy, most of those acts don't hire production guys anyways. Bands hire production guys, Not typically do I ever get a phone call. I mean, unless it's a national, because I do get a lot of Nashville guys from Nashville, Tennessee that are coming through the area. They have my information, and they will pay me to come out and mix them acoustically. But, they're an up-and-coming national act, and it's a little different budget, framework there. But right out of the gate, I just get real honest about the venue and the band that I'm working with. So if I am in that situation, I am right out of the gate, trying to have a conversation with the band while we're setting up, like, look, this is a volume sensitive room. Anything you can do to help me out is going to make my job a whole lot easier. And that usually means keeping the drums to a reasonable level. Bass guitar can easily get out of hand because a lot of those small rooms are boomy as all get. So you put a little bit of low end in the room and it will automatically reverberate on its own, because every room kind of has its own frequency tone that it's sensitive to. And in a lot of those small rooms, you'll find those tones to be in the lower register. Everything under 250 and down 160, stuff like that. I've seen a bunch of rooms that were real sensitive, right around 100 hertz, which is really the meat and potatoes of the low end of a bass guitar. Maybe a floor tom, that sort of thing. Even a rack tom might, fit into that, depending on the size of rack tom. The left hand of the keyboard can fall into that register as well. So play to the room, mix to the room, mix around the loudest guy on stage. If the guitar player is the loudest guy on stage, turn him off, take him out of front of house, and mix the rest of the band around him. So from the audience perspective, they really don't know that he's not in the mix, because his rig on stage is filling the room with guitar response and reinforcement. The natural acoustics of the room is reinforcing that. You don't need to put a bunch of that in your mix. So it's about mixing smarter, not harder. Many times in those rooms, I will find myself only putting like a little bit of kick. If I have a sub, I'll put a little bit of kick in the room. It might even only be one sub, but that's okay. We'll put just a little bit of kick in the room. And then basically vocals and direct input instruments like acoustic guitars and keyboards. I have mixed countless shows like that, countless shows. I played in a band one time where the only thing that we put in the sound system as a whole, monitors and front of house, was vocals and just keyboard. Because the guitars were loud, I was loud as a drummer. We weren't carrying subs in those days, just a couple speakers on sticks. And the bass player had a nice sized rig, so he was filling the room just fine with his stage rig. And we just mixed smart. We used a little one space rack mixer, SM58 mics, and ran everything, into the rig that way. And it worked really well for us. From the audience perspective, they did not realize that, none of the drums were mic'd. They didn't realize the guitar and the bass guitar and the electric guitar were not mic'd. We had no acoustic stuff going on in that band, so we didn't have that to contend with. And the keyboard sounded fine. We just got the keyboards the same level as the rest of the stage volume, and we made the best of it. And that really goes a long way. If you take that approach, man, and really just give the room the absolute bare minimum amount of volume that you can get away with. So many times I'm just trying to get the vocals above stage volume, the keyboards in the mix to about the same level stage volume. Unless they have a keyboard amp that's screaming loud, then I'll pull the keyboards out of the front of the house. Just is what it is. It's always better if the band is on all in-ear monitors, because that eliminates a whole ton of stage volume there with wedges. There's no greater nightmare than being in a small room with a full wedge monitor system and front of house. And I have been in that situation countless times. And what I usually find myself doing in that situation is, carving the daylights out of the monitor mixes so everybody can, hear themselves on stage, and then just barely putting a little bit of front of house in the room, just enough to bring that high end, out front, because you're getting all the low and the mid low from the monitor rig. So without front of house, it would sound super muddy. But when you add front of house and add that, 1.6 and above, in the frequency bandwidth to the mix, now you have what sounds like a full sounding mix out front. So it's just about being smart, guys. It really is. It's about, less is more. Less volume on stage is more, less volume in the room is more. You don't have to mic everything. There's a room in Baltimore that I do regularly that has a house rig, and all we mic is kick, snare, and then the rest of the band. We don't even mic the whole drum kit. I know guys that go in there all the time micing the whole drum kit, and they just end up turning most of it off or down to the point where it's really not even any use doing that. And the reason we can get away with that is because the stage is so narrow. It's not a deep stage, you know what I'm saying? So the vocal mics are so close to the drums that you get a lot, especially cymbal, you get a lot of cymbal bleed into the microphones. And the room's just not that big, The room is probably I don't know, 40 feet wide by like maybe 70 or 80 feet long. And there's a bar in the middle of the room. And they typically get a lot of people in there. They have plenty of low end in there. So you get a nice fat kick drum. You get good bass guitar, response in the room. And then you just run a little bit of guitar and mainly vocals in the tops. And man, we get it done, and we do shows in there all the time. No one complains. Everybody thinks it sounds great. Band's happy. Audience is happy. That's the difference between, being an experienced sound engineer and being sort of kind of just a weekend warrior sound guy, A lot of times the sound guy mentality is get everything in the mix and try to have control over everything. And in that environment, the only way you can really do that is to get the volume way up over 100 dB, and then you have control because you're over stage volume at that point. The only problem with that is now you're killing everybody in the room. You really are. I mean, even 100 dB in a small room is a lot. Then you have the bartenders complaining that they can't hear customers order drinks, and stuff like that. You got some people who are left over from the dinner crowd that are going to sit there, the Karens and the Chads, that are going to sit there and complain that the band's hurting their ears and, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. These, as a band, you guys really need to be asking all these questions when you book the gig. You need to ask, like if the venue tells you that you can't set up until the dinner crowd is done and they can move a couple tables to make room for you, chances are that's going to be a volume sensitive room. If you walk into the place and there's a sign that says, if you're a certain volume, we're going to cut the power to the stage, and I have seen those signs, you got your work cut out for you that night, I've done a whole bunch of dock bars like that were just, the band is just an afterthought. Live music is an afterthought. That always hits us in the ego as musicians. But if you're getting paid, man, and you're trying to, make money at this and you're not stroking your ego, then you need to just humble yourself and say, this is what we are. We're background music in here. So we're going to play like background music. That's why a lot of those places do acoustic acts, because acoustic acts fit very easily into background noise. Everyone's there meeting with friends. They want to sit and be able to have a conversation and that sort of thing. See, because I come from a band culture where when you go to see a band, the band demands the attention of the entire room. That it's a purpose-built event, meaning that everyone who's buying tickets to come in the club are buying tickets to see this band. So this band should be loud. It should demand your attention. It should be to a point where you struggle to talk to the person next to you, because you're not there to have a conversation with them. You're there to, watch and enjoy the band. You may say a few words here or there or whatever, but if you're trying to get into a 2-hour conversation with somebody, you need to go out on the patio, or you need to go out into the smoking area or something like that, or into another room of the venue, because if that's the way the venue is set up as a live music venue, then don't complain when the band is loud, because it's supposed to be loud. It's supposed to command your attention, and nothing communicates power more than volume. That's why when you go see a national band at your favorite outdoor pavilion, in our area, it would be a place like Jiffy Lube, or a place like a Merriweather Post Pavilion, stuff like that, where you can get thousands upon thousands of people at the show. Even with all those people there and being in that huge venue, they're still going to push a minimum of about 105 dB up to 110 or 12. You may get in a situation on a second stage or an opening act that will be 95 to 100 dB, but the headliners are always going to be up over 100 dB. That's just kind of the way it goes, because it's demanding your attention to watch them. You paid $50 to $150 to go see the show. You did that to go see the band, not sit there and talk for 2 hours to your buddy or surf on your phone. So some of the A rooms specifically, they're designed that way. They're designed to command your attention, and they're going to be loud. Don't complain about it. Otherwise, go someplace else. Go someplace where they're just playing a jukebox, or they have a guy playing a guitar in the corner, and it just kind of is what it is. So again, in a nutshell, the secret to being successful in these smaller rooms is less is more. Less volume on stage, less things in the mix, Let your ears do the dictation of how you mix. When you're standing in the audience, what do you hear? Turn front of house off. What do you hear? Okay, well, whatever you hear correctly with front of house off, take out of the mix. And then add the things you don't hear, like vocals, a direct input keyboard or acoustic guitar, that sort of thing. Then slowly start bringing the stuff into the mix, but try to keep it in that 90 to 95 dB area, and that's probably going to be the ceiling for a lot of these rooms. So yeah, that's how I do it, and that's how you can make money in those rooms. There's a lot of money to be made in those rooms in quantity of gigs, because there's a lot more of those rooms than there are high B and A rated rooms that have just full on electric bands every Friday and Saturday night. Probably, I would say conservatively, there's probably an 8 or 10 to 1 ratio there. So if you're trying to make money in this business, you could probably go out, especially in the summertime, and mix in those low volume venues from Thursday to Sunday and make somewhere between, $150 to $250 a night, mixing. And, when you do the math, that's not a bad part-time job. I mean, you're not going to get rich with that. You're not going to retire with that. But, if a guy's smart, it can keep you busy. It's really good to fill in the calendar with those kind of dates. Like, you do all your big dollar stuff first, you book all your big dollar stuff, clubs, festivals, all that kind of stuff. And then whatever's left on the calendar, take whatever you can get and fill in the calendar with that. That way you're out every single weekend, at least twice a week. Really 3 times a week is what's best in today's, economy. You almost have to be out, no matter how much money you're making. You really need to be out, 3 times a week, doing what we're doing. Maybe you get a church gig on a Sunday every week, and then you're out Friday and Saturday. Usually in the summertime, we're at least here at CLP Audio, we're at least out 3 times a week. Most of the time, 4 and 5 days a week, in the summer. In the wintertime, it's 2 or 3 days a week. So that's just kind of the way it goes. That's how the business looks in the Mid-Atlantic anyways. And I hope this helped you guys to be able to do what you do better. Again, subscribe and like this page, follow it, all the stuff you should be doing, all the things. I'll see you next time.